There we go. Welcome everyone to our program tonight. We have Lotus Landgrebe sharing stories from her culture. And before we do that, we want to just say that we're glad that we are here with us and that we are recording this to the cloud at the moment, and we'll make it available to people afterwards after a couple days of processing and so on. Proceed to the actual telling. We want to give the land acknowledgement. I think most of you know what a land acknowledgement is, but it's very common nowadays, especially for storytellers, to affirm the fact that we live on land with neighbors that have been here for many generations before us. And so here is tonight's land acknowledgement. In times past, the First Nation Salish peoples who dwelt in these lands would gather in their cedar plank longhouses on the rocky shores, between the steep mountains and the deep valleys, shadowed with forests of spruce, fir, and cedar, and the misty fog-bound islands and shores of the northwest coast of the Salish Sea. They would gather around their fires to potlatch, to sing and dance and tell stories. Their songs and stories would teach the next generations to show respect. They told stories of their origins and clan ancestors and offered thanks to the land's bounty, especially for its cedar and its salmon. They used tales of raven and coyote and mink and other shape-shifting beings and their mischievous ways to pass on their culture's values. We acknowledge that we are their neighbors in these Salish homelands, and that our forebears showed the indigenous people of their cultures great disrespect. We are a long way from reconciliation, both with these lands and waters and with the people with whom we share it. The Salish Sea, its rivers and forests, need our joint stewardship, and they often remind us of that. We have grieved with the Lummi at the death of Tokte, and can celebrate the return of the Elpod to Pen Cove now after 50 years. We rejoice at the return of the salmon to the Elwha, to the upper Klamath, and the northwest rivers as dams have been removed, yet there is much yet to be done to restore the salmon. We anticipate the floodplain reforestation engaged now by the Stillaguamish. We're aware of the effects of rising seas and climate change on the Quinault, and yes, the Tulalip and other tribes too here in the Sound. We share in the struggle for the recognition of the Duwamish, and are concerned about poverty, drugs, and lack of opportunity that plague the youth of the Yakima Nation. Just this last month, Governor Inslee echoed President Biden's formal apology for the United States boarding school system that separated Native American children from their families and placed them in schools where they were forced to assimilate. Lindsley added, "We can't change our past, but we can take accountability for the generational trauma and loss this system wrought. Much work remains, and Washington State will do its part to uplift the efforts of those who are carrying forward tribal languages, cultures, and knowledge to current and future generations." Tonight we celebrate the restoration of tribal language and culture to the Tulalip tribes. It was one of our very own storytellers, the much-loved Vi Hilbert, a Skadge of the northern Lushootseed, who through her own hardships recovered and restored the Lushootseed language, who gathered Salish stories and culture and brought them to us. Our storyteller tonight, Lois, after rediscovering her own native heritage as a young adult, was mentored by Vi and Raymond Moses and other elders, and as a teacher of the Lushootseed to the Tulalip youth. We look forward to hearing from her tonight and telling us some stories from their culture and just enjoying as we gather around this virtual campfire, the stories that she's bringing us tonight as she weaves for us stories of thankfulness. Now I'm going to bring her up on the screen. This is Lois Landgrebe. I'll let her tell a little bit more about herself and what she's doing and then proceed with her stories. Welcome.
Iglitsi. O gulapo ha siayaya. oh folks, good friends. Yao Yashta Seedsta. Yao Yashta is my Indian name. Lois Landgrebe Seedsta. Lois Landgrebe is my English name. Uyayus Chud Alti Dok Lushootseed Ati Duflela. I work for the Lushootseed language department. Chawatil Chud Ti Zerfu I Subbu I Clifu. Alti Closida I Duflela Cholot. I teach a first grade class, two first grade classes, a second grade class, and a third grade class. I teach them the Lushootseed native language at Quilceda Tulalip Elementary. It's my privilege to be here this evening for this wonderful event. I usually don't, I've been taught by Talk Shablu, to Chladai by Hilbert. Don't always plan stories. The stories are going to come themselves. Sometimes the Great Spirit knows what somebody needs to hear. So I really haven't put anything into plan until we set up and did the lighting and stuff. So my first story, first I want to drum an opening song with my grandson. He gets a little camera shy. He wasn't that way when he was
and I'm the one behind
3 years old.
I'm the one behind
He climbed up on a stool at 3 years old and in front of total strangers told the big bad wolf story. So, but now that he's 13, he wants to hide behind.
I am the camera.
He goes, I'm just the cameraman. Okay. This is the Tulalip blessing song. We use it for blessing of the fishermen at the first salmon ceremony. It was gifted to the tribe by Tulalip Chochelam. It was gifted to Tulalip tribes by one of our former leaders, Stan Jones, and his Indian name was Chochelam. Are you ready? The first, well, I just want to say about the song. He demonstrated, Stan Jones demonstrated how our people functioned as far as gifts. Songs, names, stories have ownership. Stories belong to specific families. Songs belong to specific families. So this was gifted to, the late Stan Jones, and he felt it was so enriching that he wanted to gift it to the entire tribe so that it could be sung at a ceremony. It could be sung at a gathering. So our people believed if you are blessed with an abundance of something, you are to share it. If you had like baskets filled with food, that you were to immediately have a gathering and share that with other neighboring tribes and stuff in the past, which is potlatch. And so that someday you're going to be invited, you're going to be included. You have, so it's that connection that foods did for our culture. It connected everybody together, having these potlatches. And these gatherings lasted for days. So the host tribe would feed everybody that would show up. So today we still do potlatches that only last for the evening or for the day. So again, he did that, so that there is 3,000 breaths, put into that song instead of 30. So, and it's, to me, that was a very dynamic demonstration of our culture, the Snohomish culture. So anyway, my first story I wanted to tell is, this is Grandmother Cedar. And this story comes from Johnny Moses. So, and he is my cousin and a very wonderful storyteller. So, si hach payats kaya. Boygola o achab uchab si alti as chada si hach payats die I of boygol us ous. So there was Grandmother Cedar, and Grandmother Cedar stood, and she stood in sadness. She stood there feeling her loneliness and projecting it outward. Oh, ulutub and that's when she heard her loneliness, heard her cry. Boyo, oh, dia swowil. And so he sent a wind her way. And hoigola, hoigol, atia padats, padalic ots, altia swowil. Twal sia kaya hach payats. And so he sent a seed on the wind to Grandmother Cedar. And ucha'a alti eat alti stuch wapshit. So the seed came close to her and landed down on the ground near her feet. And Utachtia, Utach, Ashihtab Atsia, Kaya Hachpayats, Ashih, Hoiko Atia, Ebats. So she was so happy, and she realized this is her grandson. And Uchachtia, and he grows just a little more. Uchchil tia skegwats, as hot quigwas cow alti ebats. So deer would arrive, and oh, how they like to chew on cedar. They were going to chew on her little grandson. So she would take her branch, shoo them away. Hey, will be. So her grandson was happy, and he grew a little more. So, die of ebats hoigolo. Hoptia cho eat hoyo. So little grandson had a little tear. He felt lonely. Hoigo kuyatsa atsi kaya. So that's when Grandmother Cedar called to them, and Chisab Atia Seedskid, and the little birds were beckoned by Grandmother Cedar, and Udili Twaltia Ebats, and they would sing, and they would have their little soft songs for the grandson. And again, as he bita koigo a sweet man, and he would grow a little bit more. And so, hey cop to eat hud club twal tia shokwa. So the sun above was so hot and beating down in this hot weather. And hoigo techi ti ebats twal tia hoigo quolo tia stast or steed teagwood. So she would take her branches, and Grandmother Cedar would form shade with her branches, making sure he didn't get too warm. And again, tia ebats. And that's when grandson grew again, taller. Dai hot as he bitab atia ebats. Asudam sia kaya hachpayats. Asuda. So now Grandmother Cedar was getting old, and she became weak. And us quick ti ebats oigo kolod oigo kist. So that's when grandson took a hold of her, standing her up and giving her strength. Oigola haptia udaya sia kaya hachpayats. Kuyatsa ti seatskid twal utili twal sia kaya hachpayats. So that's when he would beckon the birds. They would come and they would sing to his grandmother. grandmother cedar, because she became happy again. So, oh, lot uchachtia Ebats. Now he was taller than his grandmother, which is what's happening to me. My grandson's taller than me. It's getting there. But he said, "Oh, Kaya, utech techits cho gua techid to beat seed chud." He said, "Grandma, you took care of me. Now I will take care of you." Die Source. That is the end of that story. So I kind of wanted to tell that story because I like the tie between generations and being thankful for our grandparents and being thankful for our parents and being thankful for our children and our grandchildren. So it's all that importance of connection. So, and of course, being thankful that we can connect and help each other. So, and how the roles, change. So, do we do questions after, or after a story, or after the whole thing?
Anne has one. Go ahead and unmute.
You seemed to use the word ebats quite a bit. Was that a name?
Yeah, that was grandson.
Okay. Oh, that's grandson. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ebats is grandson, and C. Ebats is granddaughter.
Oh.
Ebats is grandchild.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And what did he call his grandmother?
Chachpayats is a cedar tree.
Oh, okay.
Other cedar. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
And also, I have a question about the use of your hands. Is that typical of your personal style, or is that typical of Tulalip, Lushootseed style?
It's probably mine.
Oh, okay.
I can never. I have to. It's amazing how I'll be really animated with Lushootseed and not as somebody pointed that out to me once.
Uh-huh.
You get into when you're, but then you speak English, it's hardly any, and then you're back into that. So
Yeah.
I help it. Something
and then
there.
there's me. And then there's me.
Oh.
It was very evocative of dance also. So it looked like, the dance and the storytelling as your art forms. Thank you.
Yes.
I will comment real quickly that I almost could understand the story even though you were speaking in Lushootseed.
Yeah.
Just by your hands.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
So my next story, yeah, well, the Huskies are ahead, in case anybody. So my next story is from the Moses family. And Tiatmas had carried these stories for his family. Raymond Moses was known as a national treasure. he was on the cover of the National Geographic, holding a drum in a dark setting. And it was unique because the sunlight just came down through the smoke hole and hit his drum just right. So, and it just was a phenomenal picture that National Geographic wanted to put it on the cover. So anyway, this is Tiatmas's story of Tatiad. Tia Dokubash. There was changer. Laevash altia buk chad u dokutub tia buk stop. So he was a being that walked the earth, changing things to the way they are today. Askoti stalachadu. So he had came to a spot where he wanted to gather all the winged people. Hoiguala ugwadguad toltia. And he was instructing them. Utarada hoiguala abits ti ukadkus. He said, I'm going to have you guys line up and I'm going to give you each a beak. And but then we'll line up and I will give you guys each your talons and claws and stuff you will need. And then he had instructed again that we will line up over here when we are done to do this. And so all the winged people would line up, and his little egg came rolling out of nowhere. And Butlad all Tiish just said, and it bumped Changer's foot, and he reached down and picked it up, and Usahwa Tiishu egg. And this little egg was jumping up and down. And so that's when Dokubash Hoipo Wak Ti Uhotia Schais. And he pulled out the little head and said, oh, and he set the little egg down as the little head looked up at him. And so that's when he was handing out a little stuff to each of the birds. And again, the little egg rolled over with the little head attached. And he picked them up again, looked at him, and took two little twigs and what to eat, all to you. And he gave him two little feet and set it down. And the little egg looked up at him and walked away. And that's when they all lined up, getting their webbed feet, getting each of twigs for their legs, or so on and so forth, until every bird had something to walk with, waddle with, swim with. And so they lined up again. And he said, oh, I'm going to give each of you Lushootseed to Staben. Asher says, oh, I'm going to give each of you wings now. And Utada Tiish, Cheb, Tiish, Bok, Tiish, Sitken, Tiish, Beat Alkan. So each of the bird lines would line up. There'd be the line of birds of prey. There'd be lines of the water birds. There'd be a line of the medium birds. And then there'd be a line of little songbirds. And so that's when he was gifting each of them, giving them each, and giving them each, and giving them each. And so that's when a little teeny egg rolled up with touch, and he picked up the little egg, gnawing aside, and on his little legs went, rubber me. And so that's when he broke each side of the egg into each solid salts. So he gave a little feather on each side, and the little egg held onto his little head and his little sticks, set him down, and walked away. And so that's when he gave them all their bodies, making sure they could stay dry. Usabab ti'ich we klikwas. And that's when I lined them up again. And this time he was handing them out their beaks. And so that's when that little egg rolled up. And Dokwiba Ukwadata, he picked it up because he already knew. And he was waiting for that little to go, what about me? What about me? What about me? And so that's when he flicked all the rest of the egg shell away from his body. And he looked at him and said, oh, okay. So he put a bird's mouth into his teeth, and Dokwiba stretched until he had a really long beak. And that's when he set him down, and that poor bird, that beak was heavy, and then he went forward and had to flap those two really fast, and he went backwards and he had to flap it again. And then he was up off the ground, and he was like, oh. And that's when Dokwiba looked at him and said, do you need anything else? And that's when Tatiad went, oh, no, I'm good. He flew away. Die Sois. That's the end of that story. So with that story, how do I put it? When I taught it to my students, we made a little magnet nest with a little plastic egg, and I let them take it home to kind of remind them, that always be happy with what you got, sometimes too much, or I give them that, what about me? What about me? What about me? So just be careful sometimes. Just be happy with what you have. Or be more like be thankful for what you have. So dich sois. That's the end of that story. Yeah. So any questions about story?
I have a question. What word did you use for hummingbird?
Tatiad.
Tatia?
Yes. Tatiad.
Tatia. Tatia. Does a hummingbird make that noise? Is it supposed to be the sound that the hummingbird makes?
I don't really know.
Okay.
Name. But, that's a very good point, because the word for frog is one of my.
Yeah.
Walk. It's so appropriate. Yes.
Well.
Another one. for snake, basat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, basat. Yeah. So it kind of, yeah. So some words or some names make sense.
Yes.
The word for crow, ka,
Oh, that definitely works. Yeah.
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 So, and next, this coming Tuesday, I'm doing a couple of crow stories for Crow Watch at the Bothell campus. So, this will be the 3rd year they've done it. They have a really large murder. Thousands coming, so
Yeah, they do.
roost right there on the campus and stuff. I'm like, wow.
If we have any extra time this evening, maybe you could tell us one.
Yeah.
Okay.
My next story, why this one is from Sobier. He was a wonderful healer. He's no longer with us. Bruce Miller. He is Suquamish, so from the Suquamish tribe. Or no, I'm sorry, Skoke. He's from Skoke. So over on the plateau, or what do you call it? It's the peninsula. Yeah. So towards the coast. So he told this story. It's why Blue Jay hops. So all the too hop. A long time ago. Tiik quiquil. Die ha dos hui. Ujust tia quates iti tito. Long ago, there was a skatefish, and he was a very good hunter, and he used the bow and arrow. Hoigol ti sasko ugwadwad tab ati yahwala. So there was a gathering at one time, and the main speaker was Eagle. And Utsutsub Hoigwala Uwilliqui Quigwa up Tia Quiquil. So Eagle had turned around and invited Quiquil Skatefish. Uhoitub Tia Ates ETE. He wanted him to demonstrate his shooting ability. Quia Topsy told you Altia Pay Guidal. The people were all gathered inside of this longhouse. Us Hegel Bitub Twaltia Swoyutub Ati Quiquil. They felt it was respectful to bring him forth to show and Altia. So times that people were humble, but it's always nice to, how should we put it, spotlight. Oh, us tia kai kai. Blue Jay was jealous. A squadil all tea, cheat all tia, a tea, stablach view. So he was sitting there. He was sitting on the side with all of the winged people, and he was jealous. Boigol, boo, QTE. So Quickquill had shot, and he had shot an arrow and shot another. Oh, Askisti, Kai Kai, Boigola. Oh, for you, Tub, Chud, Toltia. Oh, for you. He stood up and he walked, took steps forward, saying, I can do this too. I can do it. So that's when Yahola was like, oh, Ututsa Chok says, oh, you want to take a gander? You want to take a shot? So, oh, we must have a competition. And so that's when the Slachenbeer for one, that's when a couple of relatives said, sit down. Way qui guas guadil, ti kai kai. Blue Jay did not sit down. He said, oh, Utsutsa, ti kai kai. And Blue Jay agreed. He said, yes, okay. And so that's when everybody was, oh, yeah. Nothing wrong with a little competition. So that's when Blue Jay had turned around and said, you know, the Zif Chud Toltia, the Toots, Boy Gold for Dagui. And so he says, I will shoot first before thee. I will do it first. And Quickquill went over and said, oh, Walter Atza. Said, oh, and walked. He formed over to where? And Quickquill said, oh, you can try and shoot me. And so he stretched out and waited as Blue Jay got his arrow bow ready, pulls back. Just when he does, Toltia. Boy go, oh, Quickquill turned and became skinny. And the arrow went by and then turned back around. Oh, hi, to eat the clock view. Everybody chuckled and laughed and Tachi. That's when was Hazel to eat Kai Kai. That's when Blue Jay was upset. He said, how did you do that? He says, I'm shooting again. Chosashi. Again, toots. Thinking if he counted fast and shot immediately, he could get him. Right? Quickquill again turned as the arrow went by and he stood again. Oh, that's Hazel. And that's when Quickquill goes, now it's my turn. And you're going to come over here. And Blue Jay what? Huh? Ah, yeah, okay. Yeah, I can do it. And he walked over. And Quickquill armed over to where picked up the bow and arrow again. Says, "Are you a squab ooh? Kai kai?" Said, "Are you ready, Blue Jay?" Blue Jay said, "Yeah, I'm ready. Go ahead." So, toots. Boy go, Kai kai. I turn sideways. I'll disappear just like Quick Quill. He turned sideways and the arrow right into his leg. And he went, "Ah!" So he hopped up and down. He took the arrow off. And to this very day, that's why all blue jays are hopping. And deep source that is the end. And again, that was a story from Skokomish from Soviet, Bruce Miller. So, is there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
It seems as if the stories that are told with the intent that they'll be retold by one or more of the listeners down the way. Stories are meant to be retold. And very often we have found that if we want to retell someone's story, we really should get their permission to do so. But
You can, if it's to a friend or a family member,
yeah,
but not in a big gathering.
I see. Okay, so it would be if I were going to retell one of your stories, I would have to ask you first and get your permission. Is that the way it works? But in the family, it's okay.
Yeah. With
Yeah.
one or two
Okay.
you do, but if you were doing it in a gathering, so
Yeah. Okay.
say, "Oh, that's blah blah's story," or "Isn't that belonging to this?"
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I wondered about that.
Yeah, I had a long talk about telling native tales with non-native people. And there's several. Dobie Thomason is one of the really lovely native tellers that I've met. And the one thing that she told me as a non-native person is that there's so often these stories are connected to ceremonies or particular days or times of the year or things of that nature, so that unless you have grown up in the culture and know when those stories are supposed to be told, that that it's really not the thing for someone of my culture to misappropriate someone else's story in that way. And so I've had several people who of native origin who have told me, "Oh, if you don't tell our stories, then no one will ever learn from them." But at the same time, you have to be respectful and make sure that you have really learned the reason why that story is being told and where it should be told and when it should be told, because there's some stories that should only be told at certain times of the year and not told at other times of the year. And so it was after taking a workshop with Dobie Thomason that I took nearly every single one of my native stories out of my repertoire to make sure I'm honoring when those stories should be told and haven't gotten permission for them. So that was just something I've learned over the years.
Does that kind of jibe with what you believe, Lois?
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, There is specific stories that have how should I put it, sacred content.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Sometimes this belongs only to the families,
Yes.
and yeah, wouldn't quite be understood.
Yes. Uh-huh. Well, thank you. And thanks, Joanna, for your contribution there. That makes it really clear.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah. Yes.
I would like to make a comment as we continue a little bit of discussion on these things. When Vi Hilbert first started working with Tom Hess on reviving the Lushootseed language in 1967, she had grown up in Oregon because it was the only way she could keep her native culture. She was originally from the Upper Skagit tribe. And anyway, when she started working, she was one of the few speakers living that spoke the language. And even she had trouble remembering some of it. She was, I guess, probably in her 30s about that time. And now we have Lois teaching first, second, and third graders the language and telling them the stories. And I'm going to ask her in a second about how the kids are responding to these. Are they using the language and so on? But I'd also like to point out that the Tulalips on their reservation now are trying to introduce everybody to the language. Signage in public buildings is now in English and in Lushootseed. They have stop signs that are both that are in Lushootseed, and they actually have a QR code that you can take and then you can listen to how it's pronounced. They also are putting up yard signs. They're trying to do 3 words at a time around the neighborhood, so people will get used to the language, and it's really exciting to me that they're reviving their culture, and they're passing it on to the next generations. And what was probably close to becoming lost is now something live and living, and we're enjoying it. I know it's a little bit hard listening to someone who's speaking in 2 languages, but it's exciting in a lot of ways. And we have to thank the storytellers, because it was the storytellers that carried these things forth. Mm-hmm. And as Vi Hilbert was reviving it, she listened to many storytellers tell the stories in their original language. Mm-hmm. And she published her book, Haboo, which is going to be out of focus, I'm sure. There we go. Which is lists stories by various people that were told, and she put in their language and then also in English and stuff. So I just want to ask Lois to tell us a little bit about how the language is developing within the culture and the children. And I appreciate it. You share a little bit of that with us.
I have been following these group of kids that are my 3rd graders from kindergarten. And it's really been an uphill battle to actually get to see them every day. This year is my first time getting them every day. In kindergarten, it was just twice a week. 1st grade, it was twice a week. Last year, it was only once a week. Mm-hmm. So that really did not develop any speaking or develop any, because you can't treat a language like a specialist drop-in. Mm-hmm. It has to be a part of their day. And so we kind of, like I said, it's an uphill battle. But the kids, they take to the sounds, I really tell them, I kind of analyze how the language vanished is how it'll probably come back. So the speakers, fluent speakers back then still had that sharp sounds. I think that when they started the boarding school and stuff, that the sharp sounds slowly disappeared, and only the gentle sounds and the common, stayed. And then eventually, no speaking at all. So I think that it's the mirroring side where the words are starting to come back and starting to be used. And it's still in that stage of the dull sounds. The sharp sounds is going to be the last, because that was the first to go. So I just feel like children are usually not afraid to make the type of sounds that adults would be like feel funny about.
Oh, interesting.
I had a little 3-year-old come up and look me and just look into my face and wanting that. She was doing this to me because I was trying to teach the belted L. This little girl had no qualms getting it, and I could just feel her saliva and spit and stuff. But to me, she wasn't afraid. She was showing me, it's that pure that she wasn't afraid. She wanted that sound just as much as I was making it. So I have a few first, second graders. It's called a super class. And it's 2 classes connected. One's a first grade and one's a second grade. And they are learning Lushootseed and stuff together first thing in the morning. And they're so courteous. I've never had such a courteous and respectful group. It's probably because of the team that's their team teaching. They're really, there's a couple of boys that really want that sharp sound, so when I'm, doing the Q sounds or the sound, it's a running man, we call it, they're really, these boys want that sound. They're really get into that. And I try to tell them the cues are in the back. And so one of these little boys, first grader, his name's Eddie. He is so sweet. And he really tries hard. I did it, Miss Lois. See? I'm like, oh, died hot. So, it's a slow process. The thing I'd like to say as a gingered speaker, I've been learning and speaking it for 30 years now. I don't think we trust letting go, and as staff, there's 14 of us. As teachers, we don't give them that moment to be immersed. And having the kids actually take that risk and knowing I'm not going to speak English to you at all, no matter how much you want me to. And if you notice, my hand motion really helps a lot. And the kids love that too. So they, I just think that it's just going to take a lot of trust on both sides, and we're still not quite there.
Yeah.
30 years ago, it was just me and the master teacher as the language department. So
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
it's growing. We're going to have 2 new positions. That's going to, not new, but we're going to get positions.
Do you have adults who want to learn it?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
It starts out with a whole bunch, at the beginning of the school year, the 101 college course. 14 people show up, and eventually it just falls away to
Mm.
serious people that are, enough that they will stay throughout the whole. And it usually ends up about 5 or 6.
Is it taught orally or with writing also?
With writing also.
Okay.
And I wished it was oral, because we didn't write and go with English. Look, this is an A. Have a little baby looking at you. You're teaching them. When all you're doing is E. A. And there was no letters. There was no writing. There was no nothing.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
Experience.
Right. Oh.
Yeah. We're just now showing the font, the upside down E, or the schwa, we call it.
Uh-huh.
Our first graders and second grade, the super class, the one that is courteous class or classes, they are just quizful. Why is that like? Why is this like? Why is it upside down? Why? One of my my coworker and I are team teaching. Her name is Miss Nikki. She's bringing some letters, just a few of them. Starting out with because these kids are wondering why this, why that. If we bring our flashcards and it has a word, part of their discussion is about that word. We're like, we need to bring letters. These kids are just, interested and just into it. There's one called a letter, has no sound at all. And this little boy goes, why is it even a letter?
Yeah.
We're all laughing.
Good question.
No, the glottal stop.
I would comment that I just put some links in the chat, and there's one of them, the Tulalip Lushootseed.com. They offered lessons, and you can get an idea what the written language looks like if you just go to the site, because they put a lot of the written form and stuff, and you look at it, and to those of us that are used to the Latin alphabet, it's totally strange, and you can't even sound it out in any way. But it's worse than Cyrillic and some of those things even. But anyway, so you might want to consider some of those links. There's one in there that points to Lois, and there's also a couple of others that I picked up that you might find interesting if you want to explore this some more. Do you have another story for us, or have you finished your set?
I finished my set.
Okay. Anybody want to? I'm going to take the spotlight off, and you feel free to unmute, ask any questions you might have, or make any comments, or offer your thanks to her for telling, and switch to the gallery view so you can see everybody.
Lois, how do we find out where you're telling stories to hear more of your stories?
The Crow Watch is coming up. I have one on with one of the Snow Isle libraries, December 30th. So
if it's in the Snow Isle Library, if you go to the Snow Isle Library website, they have a calendar that lists programs in all their different libraries.
yeah.
Great.
And are these listed on your website as well, Lois? I guess I could
No.
just, okay.
No, I wished. I gotta get mine back up again. So
Okay.
It's such a treat. Thank you.
yes, I have a business called Moon Talk Storyteller. So I've been to festivals. I even was down at the Folk Life. So I haven't been around as much this past year or so, but
You've been busy teaching.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
I really focused on becoming state certified
Ooh,
I'm a state certified language teacher.
Uh-huh.
excellent.
So,
Well, I just really wanted to thank you, Lois, for sharing your culture and your stories tonight.
It
It
was
was a real
wonderful.
blessing for us to be able to hear you.
oh,
I second the motion. Thank you, Lois.
yes.
And Lois, this is Mary DeSen. It was so nice to see you here. Do you remember when you came on my radio show on KSCR in Everett? Remember that? And then you came out to the Thumbnail Theater a couple times and did a couple things for us out in Snohomish at the Thumbnail Theater. I'm delighted to see you here. And you're a grandma? Oh my gosh, that's
Yes.
wonderful.
Yes.
Delighted
Well,
again.
That's where
I'm
Mason.
happy to see you.
That's where Mason did it when he crawled up. When I said earlier on a stool and told it was at that thumbnail.
At the Thumbnail? Oh, fun.
So yeah,
13? Oh my gosh.
yeah, he's 13 now.
Good for you. Good for you.
So is that it?
Well, if nobody else has anything they want to address, I want to. Now, there's a purple hat that seems to have appeared in the camera zone, and we're wondering what that purple hat is doing.
Well, I have the answer to that.
What's
I can
that?
tell you all about the purple hat. The purple hat frequently is the other way up because it really gets hungry. As you can see, it's quite empty. And what we do is we feed the purple hat with donations. Back in the good old days when we were live and in person, people could donate whatever they wanted to do, whatever they felt comfortable with to support our programs. But the purple hat has been residing in my closet because we haven't had live performances and we are only just still on Zoom. So if you wish to make a donation, you can do that on our website, seattlestorytellers.org. There's a little donation button and you can click and pay us that way. Or if you prefer to write a check, you can send it to our post office box. And Barry, maybe later on we can put that in the chat so people can know the post office box and zip code.
Okay, I'll see if I can track that down. I
So
did
let's
put the information about the SeattleStorytellers.org, and by the way, the address is there. If you go to our web page and click on the donation button, you'll find the address there. Now, having gotten all that out of the way, we will get back to our program here.
Thank you, everybody, in advance for any donations. They support our tellers.
Yes. Yeah, we do want to encourage people to support our tellers because it does cost a little bit to put on these programs. But even more, we always make sure that our tellers receive a fair remuneration for their taking the time to prepare for telling the stories and telling. But before we, and I'm just glad you all came this evening and took some time to enjoy these stories, to get acquainted with Lois and a culture that's right in our midst. I live in Everett, which is just across the river from Tulalip, and it's exciting. You know, we rub shoulders all the time with Native Americans in our area and region, and we have so many names, and so much of their culture is reflected on us. For example, when you arrive on the ferry in Everett, there are two big welcoming figures on the gateway there, and that's a Salish custom. They're not into totem poles; they're more into welcome figures. And it's exciting. And I also really appreciated Lois because she reminded me of Vi Hilbert. I heard Vi tell on a number of times, and she was such a gem, so much joy, such a woman of stature, that it was just a pleasure. And I'm glad that her work is continuing, and it's exciting to hear about what's happening. So thank you very much, Lois. Let's all give her a big, this is what they call mute applause. Thanks. And thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
And I forget, there's a gesture that she used to use. What was it? This or something for applause? Was it this? Okay, something like that, yeah.
So long and thank you.
Well, let's see, I got to stop my recording here.